Back in 1984, I fell in love with Ethan Hawke because I saw him in a movie called Before Sunrise. It was a movie about these two young college-age young people, right, that meet on a train and decide that they like each other and they want to spend the rest of the day together. And they're in Prague, I think. I can't remember which European city they're in, but they're in Europe somewhere. So why? Why did I think, wow, this guy is adorable? Because of characterization. So we're going to talk up today about two things that have to be in your story to make your characters come alive.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
All right, welcome to the Julia Monte channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Monte. I'm a women's fiction author and also like to come here on YouTube on Fridays to give you some writing tips. So today we're going to talk about characterization, and I want to point out two things that help us as writers to create characters that people identify with and can't forget and that feel real, that feel like they're authentic, that they're actually people. Okay, so like I said, this movie that I watched. And if you haven't done it, that's your homework. Go watch the movie. It's a movie where they just talk the whole time. They talk about everything in life. They talk about marriage. They talk about children. They talk about their future. And it's very interesting because you get to know these two characters through the conversations that they have throughout this whole time that they spend together, which is, I think it's like 24 hours walking through the city. And so what is it? What's the first thing then that can help you to develop these characters? And it is language and dialogue. So language and dialogue is how we get to know our characters. So the language that we use as the writers, or the narrators, if we are the narrator, and the language that the characters use when they're talking to each other, right? Okay, so in this movie, one of the things that I noticed and that I really liked was that while they're discussing themselves and the things they believe in, the dialogue is just amazing. Like it must have taken these two characters, these two actors, such a long time to learn the massive amount of dialogue that is in this movie. But we get to know them by the things that they say, and it's not just the topics. It's not just what they're talking about, but it's also how they say it. So Ethan Hawke's character Jesse is super vulnerable. Okay, you can see like how certain things, like he talks about at one point thinking of being a dad in the future, right? So again, he's very young. I don't know, he's in his probably early 20s. And he says, but he's not sure that he really, like, he's really excited about thinking about being a father one day, but then he's also kind of scared because he doesn't know if he's going to be any good at it. And he tends to want to do things that he's good at. So you see like that vulnerability by the things that the character says or admits. The other thing through dialogue that you get to see is that he's kind of a goofy, kind of a funny guy. And so there's this one scene where they're in the back of a bus and they're talking, and so Ethan Hawke says, "Well, tell me about the first guy that you were attracted to, or something like that." And so she says, "Well, it was when I was at this like swimming camp or something, and I really noticed a lot about him. I noticed that he had like no hair on his body, and but she was really, really attracted to him." So anyway, she tells him all about this guy, right? And so Ethan Hawke is just listening, right? Jesse is just listening and nodding, and then he says, "Well, it'd probably be a good time to tell you that I'm a really excellent swimmer and I really like to swim," or something. And so she kind of laughs. So you see like his personality coming through by the things that he says, the dialogue again that the writers have given him in order to communicate with her, and so using dialogue to show personality, to show the depth of the character. We as writers need to be able to create need that dialogue to do that. So it's not just talking to each other. It's not just like sharing information. Anytime that we write dialogue, it should be like, okay, how am I developing this character? What am I? What traits are coming through this dialogue? Am I showing this person is funny or deep or a sad person? Am I showing that this person cares about certain things? Am I showing the person's fears? Whatever it is, through the dialogue, the things that they say and the way they say it, it should be clear to the reader, and it will help them to, get to know the character and bond with the character. So dialogue is not the only way, though, right, that we can get to know the characters. Yes, it is something that is going to be more revealing. It's going to tell us about the character, what they're frightened about, what they like, what the way they think. But the other thing is body language, right? Which is a little harder for us as writers than it is for, an actor on a movie. Because in the movie, we can see that, we can see the body language, but in writing, we have to be able to share that with the reader as well. One of the other things that I really, really liked about the Ethan Hawke's character is that he was very, like, anytime that she was talking, anytime she was saying something, he was completely focused on her. He was watching her. He'd keep his eyes on her, and she says this at some point in the movie where one of the things that she liked about him was that anytime she moved, she could feel his eyes on her. So, pretty sexy, right? Um, so this is something that you want to be able to do as a writer is um, not that the character every time, this was a romantic movie, so of course he's going to be very, very focused on her. But you want to show the actions of the character. So with this movie, yes, it was super important because we could see that he was so interested in her. He was stared at her. In fact, every once in a while, he would go to like touch her, like just to like touch her face, and then he'd pull back, like I'm really not supposed to be doing that, right? But he couldn't help himself. He wanted to see her, talk to her, touch her, right? And so that's cool. That shows us again what kind of character, what kind of person he is, and how attracted he is to her, and how much he wanted to be a part, like her, how much he liked her. But anything that you're writing we should see that because that nonverbal communication is super important. What is it that your characters are doing? If they're angry, how are you showing that? How are you showing their body movement? What is it that they're doing? We should always be able to see that. So it's not just that we're hearing their voices, but we're also seeing that. If they have certain mannerisms, we want that to come through and need to be able to describe that to the reader. We want to make sure that they are not only hearing the character, but they're also seeing the character. They can almost anticipate how the character is going to move next because of the way that you've described the character. So we do have the typical way that we tend to describe the character, right? So we say, how tall they are, how old they are, their color of their eyes, color of their hair, all of that stuff. And that stuff, of course, we do have to add in there. But start to think deeper about how to describe your characters so that the reader can get to know them better and feel closer to them. So it can be simple things like even how do you dress your character? What kind of clothes does that character choose? Do they spend a lot of time deciding what they want to wear, or are they, somebody will just grab a t-shirt and a pair of jeans. So that tells us a lot about the character. What is that character like? What is that? We were just watching with my husband Reacher, which is a new Amazon series, and one of the things that character does is he really doesn't care how he dresses. He just goes into like a thrift store and he picks up any old t-shirt that'll fit him because he's a really big guy, and he puts it on and that's it. And he doesn't need more than just a t-shirt and a pair of jeans. And so, why? Because that characterizes that character. He's a wanderer. He doesn't carry a lot of stuff. He doesn't need a lot of stuff. He doesn't really care. It's not, as long as he's got some clothes, that's all he needs, right? But so that tells us that characterizes that character. So think of things like, what is this character going to wear? What does this character drive? What is this character? How does he express himself to the world? How does the world see him, and how does he see himself in the world? And that helps you again to create that more realistic character that people can say, okay, it's not just this generic guy. He's very specific. And before sunrise, there's a one point where she's actually describing him. They're pretending they're talking to a friend on the phone, and they're describing the other person to their friend. And she describes him. You know, he's cute. He does this. He wears this. His hair's a little greasy. She says, and he's like, okay. She says, well, but he's really cute, right? So he has blue eyes. So she describes what he looks like. But that's just like the physical stuff. And then she starts to go into the part about him, his eyes following her and things like that. So I tend to think that characterization is one of the most important parts of a story. So you can have a weak plot with strong characters, and the readers will still like the story. Okay, but if it's not, it doesn't work the other way around. I think one of the exceptions to that are some of like the action movies because people are watching it for special effect and stuff. But I've seen tons of movies where there was no buildup of the characters, and all it was just one action after another, and it's like, okay, it's forgettable. But then I've seen other movies like this one that nothing happened. In fact, I remember telling my mom, "Hey, mom, watch this movie. It's a really good movie." And so she does, and she's like, what's the big deal? All they did is talk the whole time. And I probably should have known better because she tends to like those action movies. But then, we kept talking and she said something like, yeah, all they did is talk. And then at the end, what happens is these two characters, it comes to the end and they each have to go their own separate way. And they decide right at the very end, well, what are we going to do? I don't really want it to end here. And I think they decide we're going to meet one next year in this certain place. Let's not exchange numbers, man. Let's just meet there. Okay. And that's what they decide to do. So what my mom says is like, well, I watched that whole thing, and then at the end, we don't even know what happens. Do they go to bed together? Do they not? Right? And I thought, you know what? That's it exactly. So she didn't care about the movie because all they did was talk, but it captured her interest enough that she was mad that she didn't really know what was going to happen. She wanted to know more about these characters by the time the movie ended because she had become, the viewers had become attached to the characters. They wanted to know more about them because they'd spent this hour and a half or 2 hours, however long it took, getting to know them, and they felt like real people. And in fact, enough people, I think it was a very, not everybody, of course, was attracted to this movie, but a group, a strong enough group was that they actually ended up creating two more where these people come back together. They meet again years later, and then they meet again years later after that. So I don't know if this was the plan to begin with to have these three things, or if the audience reacted so strongly to the first one that they decided they had to create these other two and follow these characters along and see what happened as they got older in their life. Um, and I think that only happens if you are able to create these amazing characters through the dialogue that reveals who they are, through the body language that shows us again who they are, what kind of person they are, what they believe in, what do they care about, what are they afraid of, what are their goals. All of that stuff needs to come through the dialogue and through their, physically through their nonverbal communication. So I hope this helps you and to think about characters just a little bit different. That you're not just creating these people that fit into this plot, but you're really developing these people into real, you know, three-dimensional, four-dimensional people then, right? Three-dimensional? I don't know my dimensions here, but into people that actually feel real. Okay. So if this helps you, I hope that you come back next week and come back for another tip. Hit the like button, hit the share button, and I will see you again next Friday.